Hi, I'm Bob Knudsen. I'm the State Safety Manager for BLM Nevada. I started my fire career in 1976 in Willow-Whitman National Forest, and since then I was on hand crews, hotshot crews, heli-tac, and engines, along with dispatch, and then I moved into fire management. So that's kind of the varied career I've had.
Now, can you explain to us why you're here, what you're trying to accomplish?
I'm here today because we've had a number of burn injuries in the last few years, and they're either inappropriate use of PPE or non-use of PPE, gloves and no-make shirts, sleeves rolled up. Those are the two that have been kind of a common denominator for us. And we've been looking into those and taking a serious look to find out if there's something we can do to prevent those. That would be our goal, is to get some facts or questions out there concerning PPE, and then hopefully the group watching this will have some positive ideas and things they can do to help us and help themselves.
Last year you were part of an investigation that dealt with some burns on a fire that were caused because the firefighter didn't have his gloves on. Could you describe the situation?
Last summer we got a call that on one of the fires we were managing, a firefighter had been burned with first and second degree burns on the hand and had been transported to the burn center per the burn protocol. So we formed a team, went out there, and then did a non-serious accident investigation of that incident to find out what really happened.
Could you describe some of the observations you guys made when you were doing your investigation?
Yeah, there was a large number of people that weren't wearing PPE. Now, some of that was based on they were cold trailing fire. They had reasons to not have their gloves on, but a lot of them were performing duties on a uncontrolled fire, and they weren't wearing gloves. And it was pretty broad across the whole spectrum of crews. It wasn't any particular crew or agency or type of firefighter. In addition to the issues of firefighters not wearing gloves, one of the other things we see on the fire line, and we saw during this investigation, not relating to this injury, but we see it out there, is firefighters roll their sleeves up. So it's a concern, because some of the burn injuries we've reviewed in the last several years have been to the arms when people had their sleeves rolled up, and a fire whirl came over, or the intensity changed very quickly, and they were unable to roll their sleeves down in time, and were burned.
Are there times when firefighters aren't wearing their gloves?
Well, there's a lot of times when firefighters aren't wearing their gloves, and there's an appropriate time to remove your gloves on an actual going incident, and I think those occasions have increased over the years. We have a lot of requirements to talk on a radio, to program a radio, to dial it in a frequency. Those things is almost impossible to do with gloves on. The GPS units, operating a GPS unit on a fire is difficult to wear gloves. Swamping for the saw on some line construction, or mop up, whatever it is, and they might be pulling branches out. Yeah. They might have to be feeling to see if the branches are hot or they're cold. They might have one glove on and one glove off, and that might go on for a while, and then their mode changes, and they're not doing that. Well, then they need to get both gloves back on. And the same way with during some stages of mop-up. You might need gloves off, but there's a time to put them back on. If you're not putting your hand down in the hole and feeling around for heat, maybe your gloves need to go back on. And you need to know when that's appropriate and when it isn't, and monitor each other. One of the things that I think concerns us with lack of appropriate use of PPE is when people have the PPE off, they think they can get it on in a hurry, or they know, they're smart, they're smart firefighters. They know when the situation really says that they should have it on. But do they? And can they make that quick decision? I don't think anybody that's ever been burned or injured on a fire thought that they were going to get burned or injured that day.
I want you to describe the safety stand down that you guys had and the survey that came out of that safety stand down.
Last summer, when we completed the investigation of the burn injury, we passed those findings on to the state FMO, who reviewed them and then took a special note on the finding that was a large number, a high percentage of firefighters on that incident were not wearing appropriate PPE, specifically gloves. The state FMO for BLM Nevada called a safety stand down to review the issues of PPE. So all crews around the state that were on a going incident took 2 hours out of their day and answered a 11-question survey that was developed for them to answer concerning PPE use, again, specifically glove use. They answered those questions in their groups, sent that back to the state office, and they consolidated all those notes and all those surveys and then redistributed them back to the individuals who completed them. The results of that survey are something that now they can take this winter and see if the suggestions or input that was provided from the on-the-ground firefighters throughout the state is something we can help implement into to gaining higher PPE compliance in the future.
Now, is this a question of policy, or is it more of a question of judgment on the firefighters, from the firefighter?
When you have these kind of incidents, a lot of people talk about, should we add policy, should we change policy? And the fear there is that, we don't enforce the policy anyway, or people don't understand the policy. And I think PPE use comes down to something we train people when they're starting out. And basic wildland fire training talks about PPE use. And I think by making more policy, it doesn't solve the problem. I mean, we need to encourage and convince our firefighters that they need to wear gloves and PPE appropriately to protect themselves from injury. Instead of focusing on the negative, focus on the positive. Reinforce the people that are wearing the PPE. Say, hey, good job. You're setting a great example, and really kind of emphasizing that aspect of it instead of more of a positive than a negative reinforcement. There is no simple solution to the problem we have here. And I think the only way we're going to solve this is to have actual on-the-ground firefighters that are professionals that do this every day. They're the ones that can come up with a solution on this. A number of years ago we had a problem with the people getting burned on fires and not getting treated appropriately, and it was fire people that actually came up with the burn protocol. And it's a very successful procedure we have now that we've used to the benefit of the firefighters. And I think that this is another issue that the fire community itself can come up with a solution, and not someone sitting back in the office and writing policy. One other thing we need to think about, though, is that this is a dangerous job we do. We're always going to have injuries to firefighters, and some of those are going to be burn injuries, but we just have to keep in mind we should never stop doing everything we can to prevent those. And I think that's something that we all need to take home.